Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, oh, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show? My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go to a cup of coffee, maybe a lunch. We both decide to go. Yeah, if you defend the Constitution against all foreign and domestic, I don't recall being an expiration date on that.
Alright, what's going on here? Finish the song. Finish the song.
Tell me we got technical difficulties again.
Yeah, said we're not connected here. Let me see here what's going on here.
Okay.
We should be connected, and this should be working. So let me see here what's going on here. Okay, we've lost this. We've lost Blog Talk here for a second. Let's bring that back up.
The Jews are getting wise to it.
Please enter your host pin. When finished, press the pound key.
They know they can't shut us up. They can't refute us, so they're trying to shut us up.
Our menu has recently changed. Please listen carefully to the new prompts before making your selection. To start your show now...
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we're reconnecting you now.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
How can I convince you when you're introduced to here? Turn your heart away from me each time when I come here.
Alright, we've already heard that, so I'll skip that. But I did have something I wanted to play here, another little musical tune, and let me do that. I think I can do that. Or then again, maybe I can't here. Let me see here. I think it's nearly the end of time, 'cause we're all together now, we've drawn the line. Our flag is up, the stock market's down, but now we're united from the country to the town. Little Hank Jr. for you. We live back in the woods, you see. Big city problems never bothered me. But the world has changed, so have I. America can survive. America will survive. We can plow our fields all day long. We can catch catfish from dusk till dawn. Yeah, we have toughed it out a time or two. Ain't too many things these boys and girls can't do. We grow good old tomatoes. We got hometown pride, and America can survive. America is gonna survive. Well, that's what we're working on at any rate. Trying to pull America through. Let me ask you something. Eli James is my guest today. Is America the promised land? I mean, did we we certainly crossed the ocean here, came here to settle this land, and been really fair with the Indians, who had a more advanced civilization than we're even told here.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Well, they had a couple of different elements going on here, and of course, the pilgrims, we have to go back to the pilgrims who were seeking religious freedom and to some extent economic freedom, but what was going on, the pilgrims of England didn't want to be Anglicans. They wanted to practice Christianity according to their own conscience, which actually is in accordance with the teachings of Paul. Paul set up not churches, but congregations, and these congregations would elect their own elders or presbyters, okay, as they're called by the Presbyterian Church, and their own deacons and priests and bishops, what have you, okay? So these Congregationalists, otherwise known as pilgrims, believed that every congregation should have its own authority and should not be dictated to by the Anglican Church, okay? And that was what was going on in the days of King James, and the reason why King James had the KJV version is the so-called authorized version. I don't think it was authorized by Yahweh, but it was authorized by King James to overshadow and overpower the independence movement that was going on with the Pilgrims, the Congregationalists, and to some extent with the Puritans. The Puritans were more or less, they were Protestants who were reluctantly submissive to King James. However, the Pilgrims were openly antagonistic to King James and the Anglican Church. These are the people who founded America. It was freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom of action. That's the principle that America was founded on. And of course, today we have the exact opposite spirit in control of our nation, namely global Jewry and their dictatorship of economics, dictatorship of usury, and of course suppression of true Christianity, suppression of liberty, etc., etc. These things should be obvious to anybody who has eyes and ears.
Now, let me ask you something. We mentioned the Indians here, and the Spanish Armadas came over here, the conquistadors came over here, stole all the gold, and a lot of this they did for Rome. They did for the Catholic Church. In the beginning, the Catholics weren't even allowed to read the Bible for themselves. weren't allowed to hear about Jesus telling them to beware of the Jews that say they're Jews. Now, I've got a lady that comes on my show a lot, and she tries to point the finger at the Jesuits, and the Jesuits are the bad guys. Jesuits are the bad guys. Ain't just the Jews. Jesuits did this. Jesuits did that, and the Catholic Church did come over and murder all of the Indians, who I believe were far more civilized than the conquistadors.
Yeah, in some cases they were, for sure. Than the conquistadors, absolutely. Yeah.
But the Catholic Church, and at least the Catholic Church, for this last century or so, has been, their banking has been handled by the Rothschild. I understand they just kicked out a few of the Catholics that were involved in the banking for the Catholic Church. But Catholicism, and of course we're being invaded by Catholics right now from not necessarily put them down. I've said if I lived in Acapulco and I couldn't feed my family, I'd be walking up here with these illegals that are coming up here trying to get enough money to survive.
Right.
And they've been driven up here. They were being driven up here by all this crap we talked about 20 years ago about NAFTA and GATT and this whole one world global banking system that they're trying to set up.
Right. Well, getting back to the Jesuitry and Freemasonry, people have to understand that Jesuitry was a product of the Inquisition, okay? And the Inquisition was an attempt to rout out heretics from the Roman Catholic Church. And there's no doubt that the Catholic Church was the prime force in the world up until the Reformation, and to some extent afterwards, when the wars between the Protestants and the Roman Catholics ensued. However, the House of Rothschild, after the Napoleonic Wars, took predominance, total predominance, over the affairs of men through their banking operations, which have absolutely nothing to do with the Catholic Church. As you said, the Rothschilds control the Vatican Bank, and they control all banking institutions globally without any help from the Catholic Church. Thank you very much. Okay? So to suggest that the Jesuits are more powerful than the Rothschilds and the Freemasons is simply a fictitious statement. The Rothschilds rule the roost, and the Roman Catholic Church is a third, maybe even a 10th-rate power in the world today. They have virtually no economic power and very little power left in the minds of Catholics, at least white Catholics, who are leaving the church in droves. They still, however, have control over the minds of the Aztecs and the other Amerindians, thanks to the conquistadors, right? And that's about it. The Catholic Church is virtually an insignificant institution.
Now, these illegal aliens that are being run in on us, this is all deliberate. They are being run in on us, and part of that is, and this is what I have. Let me share something off of your website, Anglo-Saxon talking about the term of Awdawm. And Awdawm means to show blood in the face, to flush, turn rosy, be dyed, made red or ruddy. There's no possibility of all the races meeting this description. Only the white race flushes red in the face. Other races do not have this ability. So the Bible, correctly understood, teaches that Awdawm was the first white man, not the first human being. I got kicked out of Sunday school, I think, for asking, well, if Awdawm...
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you definitely get kicked out of Sunday school if you teach that. Right.
I asked him, well, now who did Cain and Abel marry? I mean, where did those people come from, you know?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and who did Cain marry? Where does life come from?
Yeah, that got me kicked out, but never missed that much. It's kind of strange, you know. My grandfather was a Methodist preacher. I think my father was for a short time. But I never felt comfortable in churches. But I feel real comfortable with the with your message, and
yeah, you just love it in the synagogue, Clay.
What's that? What's that? And by the way,
I'll
folks,
send you a yarmulke. See if they'll let you in.
Yeah. You know what? I've been meaning to. That brings up something else. I don't know what it is. I have never walked up to somebody and go, "Are you Jewish?" I've never done that.
Right.
I've never done that. I was, and we were talking about the whole Jewish influence. I was talking with V.K. Durham, Grandma, and I said, you know, I've known you for 20 years. Have I ever asked you if you were Jewish? I really don't care who your grandmother slept with, you know. It's not. It's never been something that I asked, but it's almost anytime a Jew walks into the same room with me, there's like an instant hostility there. It's like they're afraid of me, or I don't know. Is it pheromones or what is it? I don't know.
Well, I think a typical Jew can sense a person who doesn't believe their lies, right? And let me put it this way: if an Adamite looks a Jew directly in the eye, the Jew cannot return the favor. Okay, because An Adamite looking directly in the eye of a Jew sees the falsity that Jew has been raised with, and that the Jew practices on a daily basis. So they can't look honesty in the eye. You know, they run away. They run away from truth, and they run away from honesty. So therefore, the Jews do not reveal to us their Jewishness until it's too late. For example, Dwight D. Eisenhower, full-blooded Jew, elected President of the United States, basically installed as the head of the Allied command by the Rothschilds. None of the American people realized that he was a Jew working for the Rothschild, global destruction department. And then we had Earl Warren, Rabbi Earl Warren, who was head of the Supreme Court. These two men hid their Jewishness from the American people while they were sabotaging the white character and the Constitution of the United States by promoting integration. Okay? So our Constitution actually forbids non-whites to be citizens. You can read it right in the very beginning where it talks about slaves being counted only for taxation purposes, but not having the right to vote. Then it definitely excludes Indians. So our founding fathers had a race consciousness, and if you read Thomas Jefferson's work, he did not believe blacks should have the right to vote, et cetera, et cetera. So they were Adamites, and they understood that the Adamites were the people of the Bible.
And you say here, I've got this up, that the word human comes from the contraction of hue and man, meaning colored people, which are the non-white people. Few Christians understand that the so-called beast of the earth in Genesis 1 is actually a reference to two-legged beasts that have hands and feet, vocal cords, and are able to pray to God. The word beast comes from the Hebrew chay, which means simply living creature.
Right. Yeah, since the churches are teaching universalism, and their objective is to put as many butts in their pews as possible, and of course as many shekels in the basket as possible, they have changed the message of the Bible constantly. They constantly change it to increase the numbers of people coming into their churches. But as I said earlier, white people are becoming more and more disillusioned with churchianity, precisely because churchianity is destroying the white race. And it got this habit, it picked this habit up from the Jews, who have been about, ever since Cain, because the Jews are actually the descendants of Cain. The Jews have been at war with the white race ever since Genesis 3:15. That enmity that was declared by Yahweh right there in Genesis 3:15. It still applies in the world today, and it was actually the first prophecy uttered in the Bible, that there would be this animosity between whites and the descendants of Cain throughout history until Jesus finally comes on the second coming and gets rid of them. Okay, executes the punishment dictated by Yahweh, the death sentence. Okay, and so this is what the Bible is all about. But very, very few Christians know this, because their pulpit masters have so distorted the words, so distorted the meanings and definitions of the original Hebrew and Greek words, that they think Jesus loves everybody. But there's no such statement in the Bible. Jesus says when I come back, I'm going to kick butt. My vesture is dipped in blood. He's going to return as the butt kicker. Okay. He's going to get rid of evil. He's not going to make any compromise with evil. So, and then, of course, the churches have made total compromises with evil. They fail now to criticize abortion. They fail to criticize homosexuality. They teach that the Jews are the chosen people, when in fact they're the synagogue of Satan. I mean, they have turned the Bible on its head by reversing virtually every doctrine that the Bible contains. Of course, this was prophesied by Paul in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where he says that the churches, the congregation of Christians would, in fact, be apostates and turn against the original meaning of the scriptures, and voila, here we are.
Are you familiar, maybe you could, I don't have it right in front of me, but are you familiar with the what George Washington was told at the signing of the capitulation or whatever that was? That about the Jews' religion being within 200 years we would be a member, we would be back into the sway of the empire, which the sun never sets, and the Jews' religion would be taught in our churches.
That's right. It is. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that was Cornwallis.
Cornwallis, yes,
that's the statement Cornwallis made to George Washington on the day of the surrender. Yeah.
And, you know, I've told people, I said, well, you know, they don't have, the New World Order doesn't have the power they want you to believe they got. If they did, we'd still be under the Roman Empire or the Syrian Empire. And then I kind of made the statement about the British Empire, and then I thought, no, whoops, wait a minute. Maybe we still are under the British Empire because our Social Security is controlled by the Queen of England.
Right,
our banks are controlled by the Rothschilds living in the city of London, and we've also got I don't know for sure. I mean, you know, I'd have to really do some checking and have somebody checking that, but I would assume that the whole bar association we've been talking about here, the lawyers, you know, being a member of the British Accredited Registry. Their office is probably right next door to the Rothschilds there in the city of London.
Yes, oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah, and that square mile, I think it's a square mile of territory where all the banks have their headquarters, that's an independent state. It's not under the authority of the British Crown, okay? And so these bankers operate from their independent state, just as the Vatican operates from its independent state. But there's no way that the Vatican controls the banks. It's quite the other way around. At the Battle of Waterloo, when, you know, at first, before the Battle of Waterloo, let's back up a little bit, where when Napoleon defeated the Papal States and arrested the Pope and put him under house arrest at the Vatican, he subsequently crowned himself as the next emperor. Okay, for 1,000 years, the Vatican had crowned the next Holy Roman Emperor. But when Napoleon arrested the Pope, put him under house arrest, he crowned himself, which put an end to the Holy Roman Empire as history knew it, and he became an independent dictator. Okay. As an independent dictator, he was overthrown by the Rothschilds, who financed Wellington's army. So Napoleon was the seventh beast of Revelation, and the Rothschilds are the eighth beast of Revelation, Mystery Babylon. The Catholic Church had nothing to do with any of this and is not a significant player. And we can prove that it's the Rothschilds and not the Catholic Church that control this world. All I have to do is look at the various institutes of degeneracy and debauchery that are going on in the world today. For example, let's look at the Israeli state and the fact that they still practice slavery. They practice kidnapping of white women from poor Eastern European countries, entice them to the Israeli state with the promise of higher paying wages, okay? And then when they reach the Israeli state, their passports are taken away from them, and then they're forced to become sex slaves in the Israeli sex industry, okay? As bad as the Catholic Church is, the Catholic Church can't be blamed for anything like that, okay? What about, let's take a look at the body parts industry. The Israelis kill Palestinians remove their body parts, throw away the bodies. In some cases, if the survivor lives, you have to let go. But they keep the body parts and sell them on the open market, for operations and such. And then you have the pornography industry. Okay, who controls the pornography industry? Catholics, the Roman Catholic Church, or the Jews? How about the abortion industry? Who controls that? Catholics or Jews? How about the homosexual movement? Who's behind that? Catholics or Jews? So you can go down the line of all of the horrendous degradations that the world is going through, and you can't blame the Catholic Church. It's obvious it's the Jews that control all those degenerate industries.
Yeah, just out of curiosity here, who controls the nuclear industry? I mean, why do we have thousands of nuclear weapons in Russia and the United States and Israel, everywhere but Iran? But why do we have and all these nuclear power plants? I mean, this is another way of poisoning the earth, poisoning this world that we're in.
Yeah. Well, the Jews have more nuclear power plants in Israel than the Catholic Church does. The Jews have actually threatened the European nation states with the Samson option, should they not, totally be in lockstep with Jewish tyranny and domination of the planet. Okay, so anybody who says the Catholic Church is the Antichrist or the most powerful force of evil in the world just isn't looking at what the Jews are doing and how much the Jews control everything, including the Catholic Church. And Clay, a lot of these people who claim that the Catholic Church is the Antichrist, of course it was true during the Reformation period, and Martin Luther was absolutely right when he said that the Catholic Church was the Antichrist of his day, okay? But that baton has been passed. First it was passed to Napoleon, and then it was passed to the Rothschilds. The Catholic Church no longer has any kind of power even closely resembling the power of the Zionist Inquisition, okay? The Catholic Church is powerless in the face of the Zionist Inquisition. So those people who claim that the Catholic Church is the real, and the Jesuits are the real source of all the evil in the world, are simply not facing reality and the fact that the Jesuits are subservient. And in fact, what's his name? John the 23rd. He was a Freemason. And the Freemasons during the 1930s, 40s, and 50s had made a secret war against the Vatican, vowing to place one of their own members, namely a Freemason, on the throne of the Vatican, and they succeeded with John the 23rd. He was a Freemason. He was not a Catholic. And the Catholic Church has been totally under the domination of Jewish Freemasonry ever since. Now, so these people who are going around saying that the Catholic Church is the main evil in the world, are the most powerful force in the world, are simply apologists for the Jews who are, trying to throw the rest of us off track. It's the Jew part saying, "Hey, he did it, right?" That's what's going on, and a lot of these, Jesuit bashers, not that they're any good, but they're saying that here's the real evil, the Jesuits. No. A lot of these people have actually been hired by Mystery Babylon, the Jewish empire of deceit, to keep us looking in all the wrong places, right? It's really obvious. I mean, when you ask these 20 questions, who's behind all of these evil empires? Who's behind the gambling industry, right? Who's behind organized crime? Who stages the wars between white nations? It's not the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church was actually on the side of the Nazis because they opposed communism. Right? Who created communism? So You there, Clay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I just didn't think that required a comment. We know
Okay.
some people call it communism. I call it Judaism for the masses. Rabbi Weiss, wasn't it?
That's right. Rabbi Stephen Weiss. Some call it communism. I call it Judaism. That's right. He admitted that communism and Judaism are the same thing. And Catholicism has never been quite so brutal, at least not in recent times. It was in ancient times, as to force people to either become Catholic or die. Right? So those days are over. Those days are over. It's the Zionists who force nations to capitulate to their will, to their economic will, and to their Talmudic dictatorship. The Catholic Church is a second-rate. Actually, it's not even second-rate. It's fourth-rate or fifth-rate power in the world today, and can't be compared with the political and economic might of the Zionists. Just can't be compared. So anybody who says, points to the Jesuits and say, "Oh, the Jesuits are the real evil power," no, that's ridiculous. Totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's my prediction on that.
Okay, let me, on the cover of our book here, Mystery Babylon, we talk about 2,000 years ago, the Bible told us of the coming of the New World Order as the eighth beast, the market beast, and warned us about the Jews who say they're Jews but are not. Jesus said they were liars and of their father Satan. In this book, the past meets the future. How do people deny what Jesus said? I mean, are those the words of Jesus? And warning us about the Jews that say they're Jews, that this was over 2,000 years ago. And of course, these are the same people that murdered him.
Exactly. Well, it's apparent that Christians don't read their Bible, right? Because Christ condemned these Pharisees on so many occasions in the entire New Testament that you can't possibly get that message. Yet the churches never say anything about it. Never. They never quote Matthew 23. They never quote John 8. They never quote any of the statements where Jesus mercilessly criticizes the Pharisees. And the reason why is the Jews have infiltrated the Christian churches through their the Talmudic influence on the seminaries, which teach dispensationalism, which teaches that the Jews are God's chosen people, not the Christians.
Isn't that just Schofield? Isn't that just Schofield saying? I mean, I don't.
Yep.
I'm not sure I've found that in the Bible anywhere that says the Jews.
No.
And by the way,
no.
There are descendants of the tribe of tribes of Israel.
Right.
And I think they call them Palestinians today, don't they?
Well, on my website, I teach that the Caucasian people are actually the true descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel. And there's a slideshow, the Migration Chronicle slideshow, which proves it from history and from the Bible, okay? And that the Jews are imposters who began impersonating Israel in the days of Herod the usurper, because Herod was an Edomite. He was not a Judahite by any means, nor was he an Israelite by any means. And he was put in place by the Romans because his daddy, Antipater, another Edomite, bribed Julius Caesar to give his son Herod the governorship of Galilee. Then later on, I'm not sure which general it was, but Herod invaded Jerusalem with the Roman army and took control of Jerusalem by force. So it was a total usurpation of the throne of Judah, and an Edomite, a Canaanite, a descendant of Cain, took his place. So anybody who suggests that these Herodians are the Israelites, and of course his Edomite pals were installed as the Pharisees, the same Pharisees that Jesus Christ condemned as the children of Satan in the New Testament. And since Christianity no longer studies its own history, the typical Judeo church is utterly clueless as to who these Edomites are and who these Jews are today. They just simply believe Jewish lies, which claim they're Israel, but we know that they are the Edomites of the New Testament. And the Jews admit this in their own writings. So it's very important that Christians begin discovering their own history and stop believing Jewish lies about our history. So, Clay,
yes.
If you hired somebody to write your life story, your autobiography, would you hire someone who is sympathetic to you, or would you hire someone who hates your guts and therefore rewrites history against you, and then in the process kills you so that you can't complain? Right? That's how the Jews have distorted and rewritten history. Okay, and that's what they've always done. They have always spread their lies by rewriting history. And this is why the Jews hate me and you, because we expose their lies, right? We expose their charade. And and if they had any love for the truth, they would openly discuss these matters with us, rather than constantly attacking us through third parties, right? Or sometimes very directly. Like in my case, it was the FBI. And you had a direct confrontation with some Jew who didn't like what you were saying about their people, right? So,
yeah, that was are you speaking about Dr. Lynn Horowitz, the Harvard-trained dentist, right. who I swear to God, that was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I mean, I've never had. I'm an old biker, man. You like? I'm from Texas. I like to fight. You know, I don't.
Yeah, right.
And when I walked up to Horowitz, I stuck my finger in his chest and told him, I don't appreciate you using that kind of language in front of my children. You know that.
Yeah.
He followed me into the elevator, and he changed, Eli. I mean, it was like being in a. I felt like I was in a scene from American Werewolf in Paris.
Right. A horror movie, right in that elevator, right?
It was, and you know, I mean, I tried to convince myself that just because he was really, really angry. You think I'm just another dirty Jew, don't you? Well, I never did before,
Right.
but you convinced me, man. You convinced me, you know.
Yeah, right.
And because
yeah, exactly.
I went to David Icke later and apologized to him. I said, you know, David, I had a little bit of doubts about this whole reptilian theory of yours until I saw somebody change in front of my eyes.
Right, right. Yeah, there's more, well, as Hamlet said, there's more in heaven and earth that is dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. Right? The universe is much more mysterious, and and the spiritual world is just as real as the physical world, as you found out that day, right?
Yes.
Yeah, in the Old Testament it talks about, well, the two angels that came to Lot to try to get him to move away from Sodom before it was destroyed. He didn't realize they were angels until they told him. Okay, they appeared so real to him that he couldn't tell. You know, because normally people think of angels or spirits or ghosts as only having a kind of, a transparent form, okay, that they can see through. But no, sometimes these spiritual entities can appear quite real, and you can't tell the difference between an angel and a regular human being until you find out otherwise.
Well, that's the way Ron Wyatt described him when the angels showed up to show him the inside of the Ark of the Covenant that he found with the blood of Jesus still on it. And he described them, you know, to look just like people, to look just like us.
Yeah, until he realized otherwise, you know. And then there was the episode where, and this proves that Jews aren't Adamites, that they're not Israelites, that, I forget what, it was 5 or 6 Israeli Jews dressed up as Levites and went down in the cave and tried to drag that Ark of the Covenant out. And then it turned out they never came out. So they had to call Ron Wyatt back from America because everybody was afraid to go down in there to see what happened to these Jews pretending to be Levites. And he found their dead bodies in the cave. They had all been frozen. They had died of fear. They had been terrified to death by some entity down there, and they all had this glazed expression on their faces of absolute terror. And since they weren't Levites, since they weren't Israelites, they're not allowed to touch or even get near the Ark of the Covenant. So, which is proof that Ron Wyatt was an Israelite, and possibly even a Levite, through his heritage of being a Caucasian Israelite. Okay? So the Jews don't like to talk about this stuff, because it just proves that they're not the Israelites of the Bible. So anyway, he had to go down in there, and he brought the bodies out himself.
Yes.
And then, yeah. So, everything about, all these facts that come out about the Jews totally verify the Christian identity opinion that the Anglo-Saxons and the Caucasians are the Israelites of the Bible, and the Jews are imposters. I mean, this fact is the most important thing that any white Christian can possibly know, because you have to come out from the pall of deception that the Jews have created for the last 2,000 years. I mean, you look at the scriptures, you look at Christ's condemnations of these Pharisees, and let me just, for those who aren't, who haven't heard this quotation yet, and there's a passage in one of the Jewish encyclopedias that says, Edom is in modern Jewry, so they admit their Edomite extraction. But their submission in the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, page 474, proves the point that the modern Jewish rabbinate is the same priesthood as the very Pharisees that Jesus condemned over and over again. And here's the quote. The Jewish religion as it is today traces its descent without a break through all the centuries from the Pharisees. Their leading ideas and methods found expression in a literature of enormous extent, of which a very great deal is still in existence. The Talmud is the largest and most important single member of that literature. So every rabbi today will admit to you that he's a Talmudist, and that Talmudism dates and originates in the Pharisees, whom Jesus Christ thoroughly condemned at every possible opportunity. What don't you understand, Christian?
Well, these Christians have been pretty much dumbed down by what I refer to as Talmud vision.
That's right. Right? Yep. And talk about a degenerate Talmud vision. It's really obvious that the Jews who run Talmud vision are pushing homosexuality. They're pushing bestiality. They're pushing the Israeli state constantly. They're pushing the "We are God's chosen" message constantly. And they're debauching the society through soft porn on nightly television. And for some reason, the Christians don't seem to get it. That this debauchery is constantly taking place. They're promoting abortion, they're promoting homosexuality, shows such as Will and Grace. They're pushing race mixing, constantly pushing race mixing, and they're constantly, denying Christ in their secular programming. They're making fun of Christ in their secular programming, etc., etc., etc. So I mean, you have to open your eyes and see what's really going on, and realize that the Jews are the Antichrist. They're the people of the Antichrist.
Tell me, for some people that aren't up to date, and I may be one of those, what is or what was Edom? Where did these people come from? Where is that? Does that Is that in the Bible? Do they talk about the Edomites there? Where is that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It starts in Genesis chapter 26, and the story of Jacob and Esau is told in 25 through 28, and maybe a little bit afterwards. But Rebekah had twins in her womb, and these twins were fighting against each other right in her womb. And so she asked Yahweh, "Why am I thus?" And his answer to her was that there are two nations within thy womb. And, of course, there was Jacob and Esau. And Esau wound up selling his birthright to Jacob because he despised his birthright. That's exactly what the Bible says. Esau was not tricked into selling his birthright. It was because Esau despised his birthright, and therefore sold it to Jacob. If he had not despised his birthright, he never would have sold it. Okay? And later we're told that Isaac and Rebekah commanded Jacob not to engage in the sins of Esau, who had married into the Canaanite people. Okay, he took wives of the Hittites, which were a Canaanite tribe, and they forbade Jacob to do like his brother Esau had done, and to preserve the birthright, to preserve the ability to produce pure white children. Okay, and so, Rebekah even says, "If you do what Esau did, my life will have been in vain." Okay, so it's very clear that the Edomites, who are descendants, because Esau married into the Canaanite race, the very race that Yahweh commanded must be destroyed, that he was a race traitor and became the enemy of the white race, as the Jews are still today the enemy of the white race. That's all that Jews do, is instigate war against whites, between whites, and one war after another under the tutelage of the Rothschilds, who are the world experts at creating wars, destroying white race, and profiting from these wars.
Fund both sides. This is what they do. Yeah. They fund both sides of a conflict, and if we don't have an enemy strong enough, they create one.
That's right.
You know, right. Let me point out what happened in Russia. They killed 60 million white Christian Russians. They exported them from some of the white Russians who had taken refuge in Germany. They sent them back to Russia, where they were murdered. And
right.
You know, isn't this what's happening right now? I'm almost of the opinion, Eli, and I certainly want yours, that they have probably killed more Americans. If you add up the people that have died from pharmaceuticals, the people that have died from cancer, that they probably killed more Americans than they did GMO food, yes. And of course now we've got the chemtrails. They've probably killed more Americans than they did Russians, and we don't even know it.
Right, yeah, vaccinations too. You know, that first plague during World War I was caused by a vaccine. Okay, millions. So, you know, of course, the Jews have controlled the pharmaceutical industry, you know, ever since. The Rockefellers. There's a great book by Eustace Mullins that talks about the AMA and how the AMA was founded by a Jewish quack. And the Jews have been in control of the AMA ever since, just as in the control of the ACLU, which, you know, attacks our Constitution. So wherever you look, the Jews are leading the attack on our institutions, on our religion, on our physical bodies, upon Christianity. I mean, you just go all the way down the list. Everything that's attacking white civilization is led by a Jew. I mean, it's irrefutable.
John 7:1.
Irrefutable.
John 7:1. After these things, Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry or Idumea, because the Jews sought to kill him.
Amen. Amen. That verse is never quoted by any Judeo minister, right?
Well, this
And
is,
then,
by the way, most of these churches,
1:3.
Dr. Jake Wade, who has Timothy Bible College, who has the Way Church, he says that all of these churches have a cornerstone dedicated to the worshipful master, a Masonic cornerstone.
Okay, that's possible. Well, yeah, a lot of these televangelists are actually Freemasons. That guy down in Texas, he actually looks like the devil. He preaches a lot of nonsense, but all of these televangelists preach that the Jews are God's chosen people and that the law has been done away with. I mean, these are exactly the opposite teachings of the Bible. Kenneth, what's his last name? He's a Freemason. Total Freemason. A lot of these so-called televangelists are actually Freemasons that have been placed on the YouTube to fool Christians into practicing a totally new religion, which actually denies Christ and worships the Jews. Maybe somebody listening, I don't know if you got a chat room there. I can't think of the guy's last name because I don't watch television much anymore. But yeah, he's a Jew-loving Antichrist, Freemason, and this is the nature of what's going on Talmud Vision and even the religious programming. The religious programming is also Talmud Vision. In fact, the religious program is even worse because it constantly promotes the idea that the Jews are God's chosen people.
And they do control, this is the problem we've got. This is why none of our problems are going to be solved by elections, because the Jews control all of the news media. The Rothschild bought Reuters in the 1800s.
Yeah, Reuters, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Reuters.
Right. Yeah, and they control the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, the Los Angeles Times. They control all of the major newspapers, all of the magazines, and that's why the content of these magazines is so degenerate. It's because the Jews are trying to destroy the white race, getting us involved in homosexuality, porn, you name it, race mixing. They're promoting every form of vice that is forbidden in the Bible. And so, considering how degenerate these people are, how could they possibly be God's chosen people? But of course, we don't think. We simply believe the big lie and don't think about, the details of, what are these people actually doing? What qualifies them as being God's chosen people? Where is the, righteousness that the whole Bible preaches? Where is this righteousness among the Jews? It's non-existent. It's utterly non-existent. So if the Jews are God's chosen people, why aren't they setting the example of righteousness? They're doing the exact opposite. They're debauching morality everywhere. And, for example, the Bible teaches the Jubilee. All debts are to be forgiven every 49 years. When was the last time, say, that you recall a Jew forgiving a debt?
No, the only thing I can think about the Jews is the Kol Nidre, where they're excused for ripping off us Gentiles.
Exactly. So Judaism is the religion of the Antichrist. It's not the religion of the Bible. And their Talmud, their own Talmudic writings admit these things, that they make all this stuff up. And that's what Jesus said to these Pharisees. You have destroyed the religion of Moses by your own tradition. And he said to them, if you had believed Moses, you would believe me. So these Pharisees never believed Moses. They simply make up their own tradition and tell us, oh, well, this is Moses' teaching. This is what Moses taught us. No, he didn't. It's a direct violation of Deuteronomy 4:2, which says, "You shall not change the written word that I have given you." But the Talmud changes it all. The Talmud has utterly, destroyed the laws of Moses. And so they teach this lie, and Christians believe it, that the Jews have preserved the oracles of God. I mean, if there was ever a satanic lie, that's it. The Jews have utterly destroyed the oracles of God and have never obeyed a single law of Moses. Never. Not once.
How do we find this? You know, we have a book out called Mystery Babylon, New World Order Unveiled. It's almost an autobiography about 25 years in the Patriot movement. Got a history of the Rothschilds in it. And what inspired us to do that book was the Homeland Security assessment that they put out. This assessment tried to paint the veterans as the bad guys and Christian identity as the bad guys. And before I ever knew anything about the whole Jewish issue, I started the militias after what happened in Waco. I mean, and that was because, and the Free American and this radio show, because I was outraged that the media would try to excuse the jackbooted thugs going into Waco and killing 17 little... Well, they had to do that to save them from a child molester. They had to do it. They had to kill all their families, too. And then suddenly I was attacked by all of these Jewish organizations, Southern Poverty Law, ADL, AIPAC, and I just, I was...
Yeah, you were just attacking the government's violation of posse comitatus.
Yes.
And so what would that have to do with Judaism? Right? I'm sure you were asking yourself that question.
Yeah.
Why are all these Jewish organizations suddenly attacking me? I'm just pointing out, the government's violation of posse comitatus.
Yeah, and I'm just an old Texas biker, man. I don't know, what the hell's wrong with them? What are they afraid of?
Whose toe did you step on accidentally, right? Yep. Well, the same thing happened to Joe McCarthy. He was flushing out all of these Hollywood commies that, and of course, Hollywood is totally controlled by Jews. And we just quoted Rabbi Stephen Wise, the chief rabbi of the United States, who stated very plainly that some call it communism, I call it Judaism. So when Joe McCarthy started flushing out these communists in Hollywood and in the State Department and in the military, and one commie after another turned out to be a Jew, the Jews started getting after Joe McCarthy, right? The biggest mistake he made was to hire a Jewish lawyer. that guaranteed his downfall. And then they murdered him.
They murdered McCarthy?
Yes, they did. Yeah. Yeah, they dragged him up to, what was that, Bethesda Naval?
No, that wasn't McCarthy. That was Forrestal, James Forrestal.
Oh, Forrestal. Well, I think they murdered McCarthy, too.
Well, they certainly demonized him for...
Yeah, right. They demonized him and then they killed him. This is how the Jews operate. Whenever a public figure gets too close to the truth, they get rid of him. Just like, Kennedy. When Kennedy issued executive order...
Hey, hold on 1 second. 1 second here.
You to the center.
Okay, all right.
The center of understanding. Truthradio.com or truthradio.info.
All right, that's just our little commercial there for Truth Radio, where we're broadcasting now. That puts us up on TalkStream Live and other things. So we're getting out there. We're still getting out there. they've tried to do, they've tried to stop this. They've tried to stop me. They've taken over all these Patriot stations. This is, you know, RBN, GCN, Alex Jones. Of course, Alex never talked. You know, he hasn't spoken to me since I suggested his wife might be his handler.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all the commercials. Well, Clay, you could just do so much better if you wouldn't talk about the Jews.
Yeah, right. I got this great article. This is off rents.com. James Forrestal and Joe McCarthy by Dave Martin, posted 9/29/11. In the middle of the 20th century, the two most important anti-communists in the United States government were Secretary of the Navy and later Secretary of Defense James V. Forrestal. By the way, the memory of Forrestal has been utterly erased from the history books, and Wisconsin Senator Joseph R. McCarthy. But they had a great deal more in common than that. The following passage from the pages of the 1966 book, The Death of James Forrestal, written by Cornell Simpson, states there were extraordinary parallels in the lives and deaths of McCarthy and Forrestal, two Irish Catholic Americans who both rose by their bootstraps to high office in Washington, D.C. Of course, Joe McCarthy was a senator from Wisconsin, and who successively spearheaded the fight against a worldwide communist conspiracy. Each man was the victim of smear attacks that rose to a pitch of vituperation and vileness previously unmatched in this century. Each man was pathologically hated every left-winger and subversive in America, namely every Jew in America. Each man died at a most convenient and strategic time, and each death beyond doubt altered the course of history. Appropriately.
What? Hang on, I lost you there.
And names to him.
Go ahead.
All right?
Yeah, I got you now. It just
okay.
Cut off for a second. Go
how
ahead.
Long was I off?
No, you just one breath.
Okay, very good. Appropriately, it was Forrestal who personally alerted freshman Senator McCarthy to the communist menace and named names to him of key persons in our federal government who were consistently shaping our policies and programs to benefit Soviet Russia. It was Forrestal who thus directly inspired McCarthy's subsequent exposés of communist influence and subversion in the federal government. After Forrestal met his violent end, McCarthy moved up to the front lines. And when McCarthy began publicly exposing communists in the State Department, the Communist Party at once openly proclaimed in the Daily Worker and elsewhere that McCarthy was now the communists' main enemy. The Daily Worker also called on all communists and left-wing elements to unite in and give top priority to the fight against quote-unquote McCarthyism. For years, McCarthy continued his important work of investigating and unmasking individual communists infiltrated into department after department of our federal government and of exposing and opposing many of the executive department's foreign and domestic policies. He also wrote two well-documented anti-communist books. He had two more such books in the works when he died. Meanwhile, the communists and their legions of left-wing camp followers in the government and in all the nation's propaganda media, and also in the big foundations on college campuses, in pulpits, in labor unions, in, of course, Zionist establishment, which the author doesn't mention, with the eager cooperation of the White House itself under both President Truman and Eisenhower, who we know was a full-blooded Jew, conducted a merciless campaign to smear McCarthy, to attack his techniques, to protect and whitewash the communists he exposed, to conceal his true achievements from the public, to impede his vital investigations, then to totally halt his exposures of communism, oust him from office, and destroy him personally. So, again, it's obvious that this was a demonization of Joe McCarthy, who was actually exposing the communists, the Jewish communists in our midst, okay? Joe McCarthy died May 2, 1957 at the age of 47, ostensibly of natural causes. He had been hospitalized with hepatitis Clay, isn't hepatitis one of those diseases you get from vaccinations?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is. So I wonder who vaccinated him and then put him in the hospital. He had been hospitalized with hepatitis, a disease that normally has a low fatality rate. His death was unexpected and sudden, occurring about an hour after he had taken a turn for the worse on the fourth day after he entered the hospital. Like James Forrestal, Joe McCarthy walked into Bethesda Naval Hospital as its most controversial patient and as the one man in America most hated by the communists and, of course, by the Jews. And like Forrestal, he left in a hearse as a man whose valiant fight against communism was ended forever. Okay? McCarthy was murdered.
And of course,
In the same way that Forrestal was.
and of course, that's exactly, Eli, that's exactly what they tried to do to me. They,
Right?
two Jewish firms. I mean, remember in April of 2004, the story broke in the New York Times about George Bush allowing the NSA to tap everybody's phones? It was two Israeli companies that tapped our phones, Amdocs and
That's right.
Converse. And
Right.
they tapped my phone so they knew exactly where I was on a motorcycle. I was the only motorcycle on the street. They T-boned me. Woman never went to jail that hit me. A woman never went into court that hit me. Had drug charges pending, and got me to the hospital and drugged me. Their only mistake, as far as I can tell, their only mistake was trying to overdose an old biker.
Yeah, right. Who was telling the truth. The truth was getting too close to Jewish.
I
To the
referred
Jewish truth.
to 9/11 on the air, on this show, as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning. I said no Arabs in a cave made the U.S. Air Force stand down. They didn't do that.
Right.
And of course,
Yeah.
the Larry Silverstein released the World Trade Center, insured it for a few billion
Yeah.
against
Right.
terrorist attacks, and I put building number 7 on the cover of my magazine, Free American.
Right. Right.
And almost
Buy low,
immediately,
sell high. That's the
I
Jewish creed.
this whole story is in Mystery Babylon, our book that you co-authored with me.
Which people should read.
We should, and
Turn off television and read our book.
you probably need to put that up on your website. It's it's shop.freeamerican.com. You can get that, and you can get all the issues of the Free American. And every issue of the Free American, I expose this whole Jewish conspiracy. I've even got articles by Jews in there about themselves, like Benjamin Friedman, who said this whole Christianity thing is the biggest con out there.
Yeah, Judeo-Christianity.
Judeo-Christianity, yes. He said, so-called Jews, the way he refers to them.
Yeah. Let me get back to James Forrestal because the people need to know about this, okay? And, of course, Forrestal was murdered before McCarthy because Forrestal was just as much an anti-communist as McCarthy. But this article says that Forrestal was dubbed the godfather of communist attainment, okay? He was certainly recognized as perhaps their leading enemy, that is, the enemy of the communists, by the Soviet leaders and informed communists within the United States. But that was never translated into hatred from rank-and-file U.S. leftists. He was the subject of a vituperative and vile smear campaign similar to what McCarthy faced and continues to face posthumously. But it did not arise from his anti-communism. The impetus for it was entirely his principled position in opposition to the creation of the new state of Israel. That is to say, his anti-Zionism. The smear campaign against Forrestal was not and has not been widespread as it was and has been against McCarthy. It was the work primarily of popular syndicated communists Drew Pearson and Walter Winchell. Winchell was a Jew, by the way. Another leader in the assault on Forrestal, whom he painted as a near tool of U.S. oil interests, was the California lawyer, Catholic, and Zionist Bartley Crum. Hoops and Brinkley describe a speech Crum gave about Forrestal in March of 1948 as, quote, emotional and demagogic, and a thing of gross distortions and falsehoods readily recognized as such by participants and observers on the Washington scene, but far more plausible to the partisan audience in the Cleveland Auditorium where it was delivered and to the readers of the Jewish Outlook in which it was later printed. Though Crum was a leftist and his anti-Forrestal themes were picked up by leftist Progressive Party candidate for President Henry Wallace, who I believe is also Jewish, the attacks were based mainly upon Forrestal's anti-Zionism, not his anti-communism. Winchell's participation in the scurrilous campaign is most telling. Winchell was an ardent anti-communist, but even a more ardent Zionist. Okay, so Winchell was playing the game that a lot of Jews play, namely, I'm an anti-communist Zionist, right? There is no such thing, folks. There is no such thing. So it's clear that Forrestal, because he took a position against the formation of the Israeli state, incurred the wrath of global Jewry, and that's why he was murdered.
All right, let's, one of the first things I think people really need to understand what happened here. Kennedy issued Executive Order 1110. I still carry one of his $5 bills around in my wallet.
Okay.
United States notes, 1963, red seal, not a green seal. Says United States note across the top, not Federal Reserve note.
Right.
Issue, and the first thing that Johnson did on the plane going back to Washington was recall all of that money that was issued.
Right.
Yeah.
He overturned it.
And Johnson was also responsible for killing 45,000 or more veterans in Vietnam, soldiers in Vietnam. 45,000 of my brothers were died there. More of them have committed suicide when they got back. You can thank Johnson for that, and you can also thank Johnson for the USS Liberty. He authorized the attack, recalled, tried to sink the USS Liberty. We were 3 minutes away from dropping a nuclear bomb on Egypt. And this was all engineered by Israel. It was, I think it was Russia that reported that the Israelis are the ones that attacked the USS Liberty. And so that got wound down. But I believe Johnson was another Jewish president. What do you think?
Well, he was certainly partly Jewish. He has, I'd say he was maybe a quarter or eighth Jew, something like that. But his whole life, he was associated with Zionists. Okay? So, Zionists and Jewish businessmen. So, his sympathies were for Israel were the number one priority of his political life. Okay? And that includes the assassination of Kennedy, because Kennedy also, like Forrestal, did not want the Jews, the Israelis, to get the atomic bomb. Okay? Kennedy told David Ben-Gurion point blank, you're not getting the bomb as long as I'm president. Okay? So, nuclear technology. So that's why, another reason why Kennedy was assassinated. And whenever you discuss the Kennedy assassination, you always have to look, why did the Jews hate him? Okay, what did he do to offend the Jews? Well, he scaled down the Vietnam War. He was planning on taking us out of Vietnam rather than escalating it as Johnson did, okay? And he did not want the Jews to get the bomb. He issued government money as opposed to Jewish Federal Reserve money, etc., etc., etc. President Kennedy was just offending the global Jewish network of Mystery Babylon every time he turned around. I think his daddy, Joseph, may have educated him about how the Jews control the world economy and how the Jews control America, and JFK was trying to do something about it.
The whole book, in the book Mystery of Babylon, New World Order Unveiled, we have one whole chapter in there devoted to Operation Watchtower. Michael Harari was running Noriega. He was the Israeli that was the Mossad agent that was running Michael Harari. He also bragged, according to Gordon Duff from Veterans Today, Michael Harari bragged about engineering and arranging 9/11. And Michael Harari met the planes that were flown into Panama under Operation Watchtower. The cargo was cocaine. I sent Bill Clinton copies of the Cthulhu document through George Stephanopoulos. And William Tyree, who's doing life in prison, in Walpole Prison, laughed at me. He said, Clinton ain't going to do nothing with that. He works for George Bush. You'll hear about a little place called Mena, Arkansas here. This is where Barry Seal flew all the drugs in, and it was protected from the state boys by Governor Bill Clinton.
William the Red-Nosed Governor. His cocaine, his snorting the cocaine that the Bush cartel was importing. Right. They're good buddies.
Yep.
But it was right.
So we don't have any choice. We can't elect a president. I mean, I'm certainly no fan of Barack Obama, but he's a perfect New World Order leader. I mean, he's black, he's white, he's Jewish, he's Muslim, he's and he poses as a Christian. So perfect New World Order leader. But it wasn't any better under Bush Jr., or Clinton, or Bush Sr.
Yeah.
We've been totally taken over.
Obama was being transparent about his anti-Christianity. He's very transparent about that.
Now, what are we in for here? I mean, as we've already pointed out, they probably killed more Americans. More Americans have died just like Forrestal and McCarthy in hospitals.
Right.
They certainly tried to kill me in the hospital, and when they failed in that, make sure you better get guardianship of him. He may never be right again. You know, he's got these delusions of Judaism, and be sure he takes this medication. Let's see, I read the contraindication. That said it creates heart attacks. I don't think I'm going to take that.
Right.
You have to.
That's kind of the same thing they gave McCarthy and Forrest.
So what do we do? Now, one of the things that I'm working on right now is, and I started this over 20 years ago, the whole Liberty Village concept. The Liberty Village concept, to me, if we grow our own food in that backyard instead of grass, and we grow, and we put solar and wind on our houses, tell the neighborhood association to kiss your ass and start this. Save the water off of your roof and store it in rain barrels if you don't live in Colorado.
Yeah, right.
And then you don't need the government or the bankers for much. You don't need them for nothing.
Right.
And a gentleman by the name of Noah West, who I got in contact with last month, and I put all of his information up on my website, and I haven't heard from him for a week or so because he says he's being attacked now. You know.
Oh, wow. Join the club.
Yeah, and this, what he planned to do, he's got land in Florida to do it on. He planned to build self-sufficient homes. One home that's got solar on the roof, a garden on the roof, business on the first floor, residence on the second floor, and water in the basement. Water in 15,000 gallon water tank, rainwater, keep the rainwater off of the roof, filter it, get all the aluminum, all the barium out of it. And then,
very good.
And then you're totally self-sufficient. No electrical lines running to no poles. I was thinking about that. My electric bill runs probably $100 a month, and this is on a 37-foot trailer. And how much we pay every month to these power companies? I said the whole Obama idea of greening America is to sell that top of that mountain to a Chinese company so they can come in and put in windmills. They run the electricity generated by the windmills down the mountain to the power company, and then the power company charges you more because there's a couple more hands in your pocket. My idea of greening America is install your own power, own your own house, make each house pay for itself, become a source of income from you, and grow your own food. Then you're self-sufficient. Richard Kelly Hoskins.
I think Obama is trying to make it illegal for people to grow food on their own property. In the city or in towns, you have to be a quote-unquote, corporate government-approved farmer. Right? The last thing the government wants is self-sufficiency and independence. It's sophisticated slavery, which I hope people are beginning to realize that that's what it is. It's just another form of slavery imposed by the federal government.
Blank number 9 on the Communist Manifesto is corporate farms and regional planning. Can you say Agenda 21?
Right.
And number 7.
Right.
Number 7, government ownership of factories and agriculture.
Sounds like you're getting a call.
Yeah, hang on a second. Hello, who do we have here? 702 area code. Who are you? Heavy breathing doesn't do it for me. Sorry about that. So,
right.
Now I've got a little bit of a problem here. Maybe you can help. Maybe you can straighten it out for me. I don't know. I refer to the Republicans and Democrats as two wings of the same bird, and that bird's a global vulture. It ain't an eagle.
That's right.
And what about communism and fascism? Now, technically, Thomas Jefferson said if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land we conquered. So that's a pretty good description of fascism. And Germany, Hitler fought the Jews. He fought communism, and but fascism wasn't exactly. It's like the FBI today is protecting the bankers. The CIA is protecting the bankers of the oil companies. Smedley Butler said war is a racket. We talked about that yesterday. So Smedley Butler is, he's telling you that they're using the army and the troops here to protect the bankers. That's almost a description of fascism. But every plank on the Communist Manifesto is intact in America today. Everything you talked about with the attack on McCarthy and Forrestal, this is communism. Everything, Agenda 21, communism. Control Monsanto, communism. So what do we got? Two wings of the same bird. They've just merged communism and fascism today, and they want to play two sides against each other. What? You're a conservative? Well, I'm a liberal. You're a Democrat? Well, I'm a Republican. Oh, kiss my ass. You're both idiots. What do you think?
Yeah, you're a deluded pro-Zionist and you don't know it. Yeah, it's amazing, the power of brainwashing. And then, of course, that's the game played by Rush Limburger. And, the left doesn't have any famous broadcasters because they can't sell what nobody's buying what they're selling. But, yeah, the left-wing propaganda is, big government will solve all your problems. And the right-wing, so-called right-wing propaganda is the Zionists. We must, support the Zionists. So either way, we're supporting Jews.
Yeah,
and people simply don't realize it.
I just got somebody that stopped listening to my show today. Yeah, and give you an example. I mean, this is insanity to me. A woman that I met in Tucson, and by the way, in Tucson, as soon as our book came out, and I went into some of the biker bars and told people about it. Here's a book, $40. Here's a book, hard copy. They said, oh, Clay, you're selling that book to raise money for a snitch named Huevos. Don't know any snitch named Huevos. But suddenly I was getting kicked out of bike runs and biker bars and all that. and this, again, this is the way they work. Now, I was...
was there some hand that went with those Huevos?
Yeah.
Some Jewish pork, maybe? Yeah.
So Deborah Savage says, in the past I've usually lost my interest in listening to your program because of all the Jew bashing. Today was really rough and I ended up turning it off early. I listened, trying to listen for objectivity, but I couldn't hear it. So I have a few questions for you. Are you a supporter in any way of the KKK? Why is so much of your radio shows dedicated to the hate-mongering of Jews? Would you like to answer that for me, Eli?
Well, it's an irrelevant question. Judaism itself is a Jewish KKK. If you don't perceive the Jewish animosity toward the rest of the human species, especially against the white race, then you're simply not paying attention.
And, I the only thing I could say to her is the Jews are the communists.
Yeah, the CCC. Communist quacks.
They are the Antichrist.
That's right. That's right. Of course, anybody who asks such a question is either a Jew, him or herself, trying to distract people away from Jewish clannishness, from Jewish communism, from Jewish Zionism, which, you combine those three together and you've got the most fanatical, zombie-like, Antichrist philosophy that the world has ever known. And it's just so obvious if you actually open your eyes and see it for what it is. It's Antichrist Jew worship. That's what it is.
Well, some of my best friends
want us to worship them, right?
Some of
but
my
then
best
the ones
friends
who refuse to worship them, they kill.
It was Voltaire 200 years ago or 300 years ago that said, you can tell who your masters are by who you're not allowed to criticize.
That's right.
Now,
That's right.
If this woman, who has a very beautiful picture up, but she doesn't look anything like her picture because she's added about 30 pounds since the picture was taken.
And she's probably Jewish anyway.
And a matter of fact, I even wrote. I got this dating site that I'm on, and I saw a really pretty lady, and she said she was Jewish, and I said, I may be crazy, I may get hassled about this, but I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to talk to you, because I'd really like to know. Again, I've said this many times on the air. I don't know. I don't care who your grandmother slept with. I really don't. I mean, I judge people by their actions. I judge people by what they say. I've never gone up and asked somebody, "Are you Jewish? Are you Jewish?" I find out who they are, what they like, and I wrote this woman. And I said, I'd like to talk to you. Here's my website. Here's you can you can Google me and you can hear what the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law and the Deborah K. Savages I got to say out there. But I'd like to know. I'd like to know if this is genetic or if this is just, you know, did you grow up in a Jewish family? You know, did you get programmed here? Did you go to a school? Did you go to a Jewish school? Did you go to a Catholic school? And, you know, how were you programmed? You know, we've had people on that talked about our education system. I call it the public fool system. But of course, plank number 10 on the Communist Manifesto is government control of education. And if our government is controlled by Zionists, by Bolsheviks, by Jews,
Democrats and Republicans.
Democrats and Republicans, and could toss in the lawyers, and then you really got
ACLU, ADL, APAC. The Jews don't have any influence at all, Clay. This claim made by us that the Jews are too powerful is totally denied. The Jews are persecuted. You see? We must believe that the Jews are always persecuted and that anybody who tells the truth about them must be an anti-Semite. And consequently, the people who believe the Jewish lies simply cannot break out of the matrix of deceit. They can't think out of the box that the Jews have created for their minds, and therefore they join the Jews in attacking people who are simply speaking the truth, the plain, unvarnished truth. Let me quote another section here from this really great article about McCarthy and Forrestal, and this it's a concluding section, and its title is McCarthy, Forrestal, and the Jews. The anti-Semitism charge against both men goes one better and suggests another point of convergence. These two men have been treated as almost mortal enemies by organized Jewry. Medford Evans, in his 1970 book, The Assassination of Joe McCarthy, addresses the issue directly. He says, fanatical Zionists would begin with a no doubt insuperable hostility toward McCarthy, if for no other reason that he was in some sense a protege and successor to the late James Forrestal, whose position on Palestine in the late 1940s was anything but satisfactory to the Zionists. It was doubtful, however, whether McCarthy even knew that Forrestal's position on Palestine was, though he was perfectly clear as to the position of the first Secretary of Defense on communism in Soviet Russia. The main reason for widespread Jewish hostility toward McCarthy was the misplaced respect for the professional intelligentsia, which is all too common among Jews, and which culminates in the acceptance and the canonicity of the New York Times, otherwise known as the Jew York Times. And, of course, the Jew York Times utterly promoted communism, promoted Stalin, promoted, federal dictator Roosevelt, and everything Jewish throughout the history, whenever the New York Times was purchased by a Jew, and began to promote communism and Zionism. So, you know, and we have to face facts here that these Jews, they're not Israelites.
That's right. And it's been proven. They've been proven by their own studies there in Israel. They've been proven. They've said that the Khazarian Jews, the Ashkenazi, what they call themselves now, came from Khazaria. None of their bloodline were from Jerusalem, from Palestine, from Israel. And I've told people for years, anytime a communist regime takes over a country, they go after three classes of people in order. They go after the farmers first because they don't want you being able to feed yourself. Corporate farms, number 9. And they don't want. They go after the intelligentsia next. That's anybody that's smart enough to know what they're doing. And obviously, I fall into that category because I applied for OCS, Officers Candidate School in the Army, I didn't get it. I went in and I was pretty upset. I'm pounding on the table. Sergeant, I want to know why I didn't get OCS. I've never failed a test. I spent the whole day taking a test. I said, I've never failed a test. He said, oh, you didn't fail a test. You scored so high, they won't let you be an officer. Anyone with your IQ will question orders.
Right. Yep. You can't be a zombie if you question orders.
and the third, they go after the veterans and the law enforcement that are still loyal to the old regime. That would be any of us that honor our oath to defend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights against the
well, that's what the Bolsheviks did to the Russian people. They targeted the intelligentsia and the clergy, first of all, and eliminated those. So what we have there is Jewish Bolsheviks simply ethnically cleansing an entire class of people, leaving only the peasants, who had no guns and had no education, and were faced with a situation which they were found incomprehensible. They couldn't understand why their own so-called government was trying to exterminate them. It's because they didn't realize that the Bolsheviks were all Jews and had an intense biblical, going back to Genesis 3:15, hatred of all non-Jews, especially whites, because they know that we whites are in fact the Israelites of the Bible, and we're the ones exposing their charade. Okay, this is why Jews hate us with a passion, because we know who and what they are, and we're exposing it. But this hatred for whites and Christians, especially white Christians, is so intense among Jews. Most of them are openly hostile. They can't hide their hostility to us. And, and this is what gives them away. But as long as they control the media, and unthinking whites and Christians and liberals and even some conservatives never question Jewish lies, they will be forever fooled. Forever fooled. But of course, Clay, you and I are doing our best to disabuse them of these lies. It's time they open their eyes and see reality for what it is.
I'll have people like this Deborah, that I've known for several years. Clay, why do you hate the Jews? I don't hate the Jews. I almost admire them. Because if us white boys had it as together as they did, none of us would ever go broke. None of us would ever go bankrupt. We'd own the Federal Reserve. We'd own the Bank of England. We'd own the International Monetary Fund. And we would run this country for the benefit of the people, not the benefit of the elite. And
Thomas Jefferson predicted, right? The bankers have taken total control of our finances.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Why do people have a problem with understanding that our Constitution gives Congress the right to issue money? We don't have to borrow money.
That's right.
Kennedy didn't borrow money. That few billion that he put into circulation, that Johnson recalled. Yeah. We didn't borrow that money. We don't have to borrow money. This is the Jew lie. This is the Rothschild lie. And the other problem I've got is why do we send in foreign aid? Why do we send foreign aid to Russia, to China, to everywhere, every country on earth? We're sending foreign aid to. And we're paying for that. We're paying interest on the money that we give away in foreign aid. It's not because we're, it's not a matter of let's teach them how to fish and then they can get their own food. We don't have to give the money away. We are supporting every communist country out there. We're doing exactly what the whole communist agenda was, to provide foreign aid to every country out there that's run by the banks.
That's right.
Now, I've said
And
the
that's
whole war on
why,
terror.
and by the way, that brings up something very important, Clay. I was recently interviewed live on Iranian national television and asked why the United Nations would not be inclined to issue a resolution against the Israeli state on the Palestinian issue, because everybody knows that the Israelis, being non-Israelites, being Ashkenazi Khazars, when they have invaded Palestine, they invaded on the pretext of being Israel and has made war against the Palestinian people ever since. And in my book, and I think also in Mystery Babylon, my book, The Great Impersonation, I'm pretty sure we cover this in Mystery Babylon too, that this invasive force, there was no hostility between and among Jews, Christians, and Muslims in Palestine before the Ashkenazi Jews invaded. Okay? And the fact is that the Israeli state is a creation of the United Nations. It was a UN resolution that created the Israeli state. So since it's both entities are creations of the Rothschild banking family, and you just pointed out some of the major UN banks, the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, Bank of International Settlements, these are all Jewish banks. So I basically said on Iranian national television, no UN resolution is going to have any muscle as long as the Zionists control the UN. And that's the fact. That's the simple fact of the matter. The Iranians are wasting their time trying to get a UN resolution against the Israelis.
I said one of the reasons when they broke up the Soviet Union, that was just so the Zionists would have more votes in the UN.
Right. There you go.
Now let me share. I've got a criticism. I got criticism going on here on Facebook, and I want to share this with you because she makes a pretty good thing. I said I'm doing what God wants and telling you what Jesus said about the Jews who say they're Jews but are not.
Yes.
Everything I say is backed up by history and the Bible. She says, I am a truth seeker as well as a truth finder. I don't have time for platforms where people are just hammering their beliefs. Whether you are right or wrong doesn't make one hill of a difference if you are not loved. I have followed the teachings of Jesus as an exact science for the last 20 years. He did not preach Christianity, nor fear, nor hatred. Every step he took was scientific and a demonstration of truth and reality. He told us to go forth and do exactly as he did, for he did nothing. It was and is all done through the Father, through us, and by purposeful example. That is exactly what he taught. He did not teach religion, nor hatred, nor superiority, nor fear. I have listened carefully.
Stop right there.
Okay.
Ask that person, did Jesus or did he not take a whip and drive the money changers out of the temple?
Okay. She goes on to say, I have listened carefully to what you say and to what you justify with history in the Bible. Beware the slavery to the automatic mechanics of your thinking process. Stand porter on the portals of your thought. God is good and so are you. There is only love. Please let me know if you ever decide to turn your show into a truth-seeking and finding venue, keeping objectivity paramount, and I will tune back in. I said, don't bother.
Yeah, right. Another question for this deluded person. What about the demons that Jesus cast out of people's bodies? What about the Satan that Jesus says he saw falling from heaven? And what about the evils in this world that Jesus says must be eliminated? You know, that person is so utterly deluded and has has such blinders on as to what the Bible really teaches that she doesn't know up from down. Because she's obviously ignoring those passages of Scripture in which evil must be overcome. Okay? And nowhere does the Bible anywhere say that Jesus loves everybody. That's a non-existent quotation, right? That's one of these lies that people make up to convince us the Bible conforms with their non-truth. Okay? So whenever I'm confronted with one of these people, I just ask them, well, show me the passage that is the basis of your belief. Show me the passage that says Jesus loves everybody. It's non-existent. It's just like the quotation from the Constitution, so the so-called separation of church and state. Show me where the Constitution says separation of church and state. Show it to me. It's non-existent. And this is how false reality is created for the gullible. Jesus said, beware of deceivers. And if you're not, as part of your religion, this woman apparently thinks that she's a Christian or she's a true believer in Christ, where has she incorporated the admonition to avoid deception, to beware of deceivers? Where has her worldview incorporated that clear teaching from Jesus Christ? It's obvious to me she is ignoring that aspect of the teaching. Okay? And Jesus actually supports the Second Amendment, by the way. There's a passage in Luke where he's sending his disciples out, and he tells them, go sell their cloaks and buy a sword. If the world is as pretty clean as this Pollyanna lady thinks it is, then Jesus would not have instructed them to take swords for self-protection. Okay? It's quite amazing how people can take this Holy Bible and the clear admonitions that we must beware of deceivers, beware of wolves in sheep's clothing, and they come up with this utterly deluded nonsense that everything is love. Let's all sing Kumbaya and walk down the yellow brick road to destruction.
You know,
because that's what this woman is preaching.
You know, I tell you what, I have never started a fight, but I'll finish one every time.
Yeah.
You can have the first swing with me, and then we can talk when you get out of the hospital.
Right.
You know, and you know, love. I have a definition for love.
Love is the answer.
I have the definition of love here. That's your level of vibrational energy. And that's why I can tell you.
The definition of love. It's obedience to the commandments.
That's why I tell people, you know, I don't hate the Jews. I'm not going to waste my time hating anybody. They're inconsequential. They're wrong. I will expose them as deceivers. I will expose them as tyrants. You know, and you know, I've also said that these Zionists, these controllers, these Pharisees, these Bolsheviks, they hide behind the average Jew. They'll sacrifice them in a heartbeat, just the way they did in the Ukraine, just the way they did. And I mean, keep in mind they were advertising in the New York Times, trying to raise money for those 6 million Jews that were threatened in the Ukraine. And right now in the Ukraine, they're doing the same thing. They're killing people in the Ukraine right now. The Ukraine's in total turmoil right now.
Yeah, it's a civil war going on there, yeah. But here, that lady needs to read the scriptures. She needs to read 1 John.
She said, where does it say Jesus said, sell your clothes and buy a sword? He said, "Take no thought for your raiment nor your food." You got a passage for it there?
Okay, well, let me look that up while I'm quoting 1 John chapter 2, verse 2, and he is the propitiation, that's Jesus Christ, for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for the sins of the whole world. Okay, verse 3, and hereby we do know that we know him if we keep his commandments. He says that he who says that I know him and keeps not his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoso keeps his word, and in him verily is the love of God perfected, hereby know that we are in him. The love of God is perfected by keeping the commandments. Okay? So keep talking while I look up that verse in Luke.
All right.
Okay?
Now, she goes on to say, Jesus was operating in human form in this dimension, so he had his moments, laughing out loud. And I think that LOL is something as referring to Lucifer.
Oh, okay, so she knows better than Christ.
They were not accidental but deliberate teaching every step he took.
There goes her credibility. So if he says something that she disagrees with, she laughs. What a crock. What an absolute crock.
Well, you know what? People have been dumbed down, and they've been dumbed down by the churches, they've been dumbed down by their schools, and common sense is in pretty short supply. You want to, here's somebody that's never bought a book, never bought a magazine, and now she doesn't want, she's going to threaten me with not listening to my radio show?
Right.
Come on.
She knows better. She knows better. She's got her own opinion. This is why the world is in such horrible shape. Because people think they know better than God. This is why the world is in such horrible shape. So, it's Luke 22:36. He that hath no sword, let him buy a servant's cloak and buy one. Read it and weep, lady. You think you know the Bible, you don't know anything. You just all you know is your own opinion of it.
Give me that.
Time to get real. Stop living in a world of delusion. Stop living in a world of lies.
Give me that thing again.
Well, I just looked it up in the concordance.
What?
20.
What chapter?
22:36, I think it was. So I'm turning there now. And he also said, bring those who would not worship me, bring them before me and slay them, he said. That's exactly what he says also in the book of Luke. So this pacifistic Jesus that so many people falsely believe in, he came to judge the world and to eliminate the evil from this world. But pretending that there is no evil is silly, absolutely silly. Luke chapter 22, verse 36. Then said he to them, but now he that has a purse, let him take it, and likewise his scrip. And he that has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one.
Luke 22, verse 36. That's
right.
Okay.
And let me, go ahead. And then let me find the other verse. I think that's Luke 17.
Let's see. She also quotes, who is a liar? It is whoever denies that Jesus is the Christ. Such a person is the Antichrist.
Now, has she ever found a Jew that believes in Jesus Christ? What's her answer to that? This is why these things must be talked about. The Jew has created a false impression of the Bible through his influence in the Judeo cemeteries, right? the so-called Christian Bible colleges, which are not Christian at all, but Jewish.
I've said that to
Judeo-Christianity is an oxymoron.
to call yourself a Judeo-Christian is basically like saying, I'm a satanic Christian, thank you.
That's right. I'm a satanic God lover. It's incredible. It's incredible. But these are the false modes of thinking that religious people have been controlled by for the last 100 years, ever since the creation of the Schofield Bible and this nonsense that there is such a thing as Judeo-Christianity. And that Bible was commissioned by none other than the Rothschilds. Samuel Untermeyer was the bagman who gave the money to Cyrus Schofield, who, by the way, was a man who abandoned his wife and family to utter poverty, even though he was being handsomely paid by Samuel Untermeyer, and was put up in a posh residence in New York City. He just left his wife and family in Ohio to fend for themselves, penniless. That's why I refer to Schofield as the Karl Marx of Christianity, because Karl Marx did the same thing. And these are the so-called theologians that modern Christianity is based on. Beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. Be not deceived. This is a very important message of the New Testament, which has been utterly abandoned by modern religion. They're not giving the warning to beware of sheep's clothing. Why? Because they are the very wolves inside those sheep's clothing.
All right.
Luke chapter go ahead.
Well, we're almost out of time. Tell people
Okay.
how you get your website, and if you would, I'll have this show up on YouTube. It'll be up on my Facebook page. It'll be up on my website here. The links are for Blog Talk Radio.
Very good.
And share this, and also remember shop.freeamerican.com is where you can get Mystery Babylon. You can read Mystery Babylon today, folks, for $10. $10 on my website on the PDF. You can get the hard copy too. We've got those available, but we're almost out of time here.
Okay, well, my website is www.anglo-saxonisrael.com. That's all about Christian identity, and killthebank.net is all about Jewish banksterism.
All right, let me close this. Eli James has been my guest today. Thank you, Eli. And
Okay.
let me close this with a little Hank Jr. Can't make us run with them old boys raising the shotguns.
We say grace, we say ma'am. If they don't like that, we don't give a damn. We come from the West Virginia coal mines, the Rocky Mountains, and the big city skyline. We can hit back, and we're going to be fine. This country can survive. America can survive. I had a good friend in New York City. He never called me by my name, called me Hillbilly. My grandpa taught me how to live off the land. His taught him to be a good businessman. He used to send me pictures of the Broadway nights. I sent him some of Granddaddy Williams' homemade musky wine. He was lost like so many in the terrible strife. We're all asking God now, why, oh, why? Tooth for a tooth and an eye for an eye. That's an old slogan we're gonna revive, 'cause America can survive. America will survive. Hey, you can't scare us out. You can't make a run. We're the boys and girls that got freedom and fun. We say grace, we say amen. If they don't like that, we give less than a damn. We're from North California and South Alabama, and all they've done is unite this whole land. With no more Yankees and rebels this time, but one united people that stand behind